Hi, I'm Communicative Koina. Just like Miss Communication, I raised my voice to stand for bringing change. I used communication to help the students of my school to become more expressive.
And I am C for Courageous Shivani. Just like Miss Courage, I like to try new things, even if it's something I'm bad at, like singing. But hold on, Koina. Miss Communication, Miss Courage, don't you think we should tell everyone who these are?
Yes, we should.
Okay, so the 8 C's are our current best understanding of what leadership looks like. At Kids Education Revolution, or KER, we engage and experiment with these 8 C's and our 3 principles to explore the role that students and educators can collectively play in reimagining education. KER Night, which is the grand opening of KER Week, is a celebration of all that we stand for. It's a celebration of the sunshine that comes after the grey. As we collectively navigate the darkness of this pandemic, we welcome you to a celebration of hope and sunshine. Tonight, you will see the ideas of voice, partnership, and potential come alive in so many different forms through poetry, theatre, stories, and many more.
Exactly, Shivani Didi. We at KER endeavor to create safe space for voice. So let's start the day with our welcoming performances. The performances will be performed by some of our most courageous and creative voices from Slam Out Loud. Slam Out Loud is a non-profit that uses the transformative power of visual and performance art to build and create a very creative confidence and life skills in children from disadvantaged communities. I would like to invite our performers for tonight. Soulmate Findozai is a Malawian feminist who is passionate about using poetry to advocate for social justice. Manisha is a student poet who has been part of Slam Out Loud programs over the last 5 years. Bhumika is a Delhi-based Teach for India student who believes in the power of expressing her own stories and practices through her poetry.
The news is flashing guidelines for the national lockdowns, and in my head, I see images flash. My desires, each plan vividly clear, wistful in ear, and yet so far. The summer of 2020 was supposed to be about fitness, writing poems, going to dance classes, meeting and learning with my friends. And I always thought, even impossible says I am possible up till now. How will I study? How will I learn? How will I fulfill my dreams and hopes when I'm stuck at home? At an age where I wanted to learn my full potential, learning business studies, English, maths and account, but instead I was learning the dates for the upcoming lockdowns. Feels like I'm the girl sitting at the platform bench, watching the train speed, but that she will never be able to catch. Learning from home during the pandemic is like watching my education through a transparent mesh, covering my curiosity to learn, forming shadows on young faces that once thought learning is joyful, the haze of this mesh, steadily stretching further to reach the 20 million girls like me who may never return to the school. And I know you are trying, but so am I. So I know, while I am relearning learning and you are relearning teaching. But I promise the silence of my room's white wall won't stop me. Last summer in my village, I studied in spite of low network and no electricity. Covered 4 chapters by myself through the YouTube courses. I repeat, nothing will stop me. I have heard that the night is darkest before the dawn. So when opportunity won't knock on my door, I will hunt her in the streets and bring her to each girl like me who deserves to go to school. Turn my home into a classroom for my poetry, for my dance routines. And if the videos and calls may pause due to the bad internet, I will stay, sitting in the front of the screen till I figure how to fully make my learning process my own. I will rise from the black hole of the digital learning, even with one smartphone in my house. And I know these times may be tough, but I will shine through each dark night and create opportunity till the sky is bright. I will strive to truly thrive. Thank you.
आज दिन है सुहाना, पर नहीं है मुझे ऑनलाइन क्लास में जाना। ना है यहाँ कोई मजाक, ना क्लास की चहल पहल, ना है रंग बिरंगे चार्ट्स। यहाँ आकर बस हमें नेटवर्क इश्यूज में फंस जाना, और माँ कहती है कि अपना मन ऑनलाइन क्लास में भी लगाना। माँ बोली, ना पढ़ने का क्या है अब ये तेरा नया बहाना। मैं बोली, अब मुझे लंच लेकर स्कूल है जाना। स्विच ऑन योर वीडियोस और आई एम ऑडिबल से हो गई हूँ मैं परेशान। ना दोस्तों का साथ है, ना ब्रेक टाइम का इंतजार। अकेले पढ़ने में भी भला आता है कोई मजा। समय तो वो हुआ करते थे जब मिलती थी हमें मस्ती भरी सजा। माँ की डांट सुनकर मैं तुरंत अपना फोन लेकर आई और लिंक पर क्लिक कर मैं क्लास में लॉग इन कर पाई। क्लास खत्म होने के बाद हो गई मैं थोड़ी उदास। आने लगी मुझे मेरे दोस्तों की याद, वो पकड़म पकड़ाई, वो छुपन छुपाई, वो सारी मस्ती। खो गई हो लॉकडाउन में जैसे सभी हस्ती। तभी एक नोटिफिकेशन आई, टंग, और भैया ने हमें कविता लिखने की बात बताई। आप रख सकेंगे हम ऑनलाइन भी अपनी आवाज। आज से बोरिंग चीजें भी मजेदार बन गई। अब हुई दोस्तों के साथ कविता लिखने की तैयारी, और अब कविता पढ़ने की मेरी है बारी। अब कविता पढ़ने की मेरी है बारी।
When they told us to bloom, they forgot to mention that sometimes it would feel like the sun was trying to burn us, and other times like the rain was trying to drown us. They buried half our seeds in the desert sand and sank the other half in the ocean waters, made it so that we would have to cross land and sea to find ourselves, made it so that we would constantly be searching for our hidden treasure, but never actually find it. We left the sanctuary of the classrooms we were told would mold us. We have had to reimagine everything about everything, questioning all we thought we knew about how to make our dreams come true. Where once there existed physical safe spaces and we could experience the world around us in the first person, we have been confined to individual rooms. We have had to make do with pixelated versions of ourselves. We have had to reconstruct our futures with different building blocks than we were given before. We have had to search through our boxes of crayons and create rainbows even on the darkest of nights, and isn't that beautiful? We have taken the dirt that was thrown at us and have made clay for our dreams. This is what we are made of. This is what we carry with us. This is the essence of our being. This is what they do not teach you in school. This is what they do not tell you beforehand. This is how we will bring life to our dying land. This is how we will bloom.
Beautifully penned by Manisha. That till I figure how to completely make my learning process my own. I think nothing could ever stop our learning when we are highly passionate about it. Often, when I think about the obstacles, then there can be n number of difficulties coming up. But for our learnings, something about which we are very passionate, we must make it complete or to the goal.
I absolutely agree with you, Koina. And I think I'm just always in awe of our students and how they always stand up for what they believe in. And on that note, two such inspiring youth leaders are going to be joining us today. Vanessa Nakate, a youth climate activist from Uganda, is passionate about climate justice and has been leading Fridays for Future campaign in her country. In conversation with her is our very own Tanika, a KER revolutionary, Solve Ninja, and the co-founder of Yugma Network, a youth movement towards environmental justice. Over to Vanessa and Tanika.
Hi Vanessa, my name is Tanika and I'm from Bangalore in India, and I'm currently a 20-year-old undergraduate student. I study economics and sustainability, and I care deeply about social justice, environmental justice, and the power of what inclusive and a holistic education can do. And I'm really excited today to be talking to you about your journey in climate activism and as a youth change maker.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to join you today.
So, firstly, just we wanted to know, how did you begin your journey of climate activism, and what sparked you to find your voice and use it for a cause that you care about so much?
Yeah, my journey started in 2018, towards the end of the year. That's when I started to carry out research to my community, to the researching that people were facing and hoping to find what I could do, or what cause I could do to help out the people. And in that research, that's when I realized that climate change was the greatest threat facing our lives right now. And reading more about it and seeing the impacts and realizing that they were a reality in my country, the floods, the droughts, the landslides. I had seen this on the news, but I didn't understand the intensity of it. I didn't understand how big of a crisis it was. So it was at that moment that I decided to become a voice in the climate movement and start speaking up and demanding for climate justice. But honestly, when I found out that challenge, I didn't know exactly what I would do. So I was inspired by Greta from Sweden, to do the climate strikes every Friday. And I thought this would be a great way of, creating awareness about the challenge and also demanding for climate justice from the leaders. So I did my very first climate strike in January, in the first week of January 2019.
So that was really interesting. And you mentioned that you found solidarity in youth voice across the world. So I just wanted to know what your main takeaways are in, understanding the power of youth voice, and what do you think will change if more youth and more students speak up about causes that they care about?
Well, when I think about youth solidarity, I can say it has been a place of, creating relationships, creating friendships with different young people across the world. And it has also created space for organizing and collaborating and working together. Because, you find that maybe different activists in India are specifically, calling out their leaders or government for a specific cause. And it's because of this social media and this solidarity that even me, who is in Uganda, I will come and speak about the same thing after finding out what the activists in India are doing, or activists in say Kenya or Nigeria or Germany, from different parts of the world. When we see that, there are different causes that activists are doing, we may not, be in those places, but because of this solidarity that we have, we shall speak in support of each other. And this really makes the movement so strong, because we know that activists in a specific country are not fighting alone, they're not doing this alone, but however, it's a group of activists from different parts of the world who are working together, to ensure that justice is got in, a specific country and all that. And, for young people, students who would love to, to take on a cause in their society, all I can say is that there are many challenges, in this world. There are many challenges in this world, and not everyone will say that they want to be a climate justice activist. So there are many things, and if you feel that you're comfortable in calling out as for a specific cause, then go ahead and do it. It could be, fighting to eradicate poverty. It could be to achieve gender equality. It could be to achieve zero hunger and all that. So if you find that challenge in your community and you feel you want to add your voice to it, then the simplest thing I can say is that you should start. Because many times, if you look at the resources you have or the support you have, it can limit you. But when you decide to start and focus on the vision you want to achieve because of your activism, along the way support will come. I never knew that support would come eventually, but now there are many people out there who are so supportive, who are providing platforms for me to tell my story. So it's a matter of you starting and the other thing I can say is, sometimes you don't have to start alone. By the time, you decide to take on a certain cause in your community, there is a possibility that there is a group or someone else taking on that cause. So it's also good to get in touch with those people so that you don't have to start from scratch. For example, the climate movement, you find that there are different climate groups across the world. Rise Up Movement, Fridays for Future, and I've seen there's also Fridays for Future in India. So if you're an activist, a student, and you want to become an activist, you don't need to start alone. You just need to find a way of connect, who have already formed those networks, those groups, and joining them and finding out what they are doing. Because when you do this, it's much simpler than studying by yourself. However, if you also see that no one is doing what you want to do, it's okay to start alone. Support will come along the way. And like Greta says, no one is too small to make a difference.
Right, I really love how you put that. So I just voice is important. How is youth activism different from, adults campaigning about causes?
Yeah, if I'm to speak from the case of climate activism, I think youth voices are important because young people are the ones who are going to be impacted by the climate crisis. It's our future which is at stake. And for many communities and for many people right now, it's not a matter of the future, it's a matter of now. People are experiencing climate impacts right now. I haven't just seen it in my country, but I've also seen it in India. The climate crisis is impacting people right now. So it's important for young people, it's important for youth voices to be platformed, to be amplified, to be listened to, because it isn't just our present which is at stake, but it is our future which is at stake. And by the time young people come up to speak, it's because the adults, the leaders, governments are not doing anything for the planet. They are not doing all they can to protect our natural world, to protect the people. So if youth voices come up and speak truth to power and tell the leaders to listen to the science, then it's important to listen to them, because it is our future that is at stake, and it's our present that is already catastrophic.
Right. So, and through examples such as yours, we've seen the power of youth voice and how, a small action from a student or from a youth can have an impact at the national or even at the international level. So, yeah, that's really true. Right. So, this past year has been full of challenges, and this whole online medium of activism, this online medium of, change making has definitely had its challenges. So, what kept you going through this year, and what helped you keep your activism alive?
Yeah, because of the pandemic, of course, very many things changed for us in our activism. But then we realized that the climate crisis wasn't, it wasn't put in lockdown. Even in the pandemic, climate change continued. Because I remember last year while we were in lockdown, the water levels of Lake Victoria, they rose and many people's homes were encroached. Many with the water, many farms were destroyed, people's businesses were destroyed. And this was at a time when, people were going through a pandemic, people had to stay at home, and yet their homes have been washed away by the waters, from the lake, by the rise of the waters from the lake. So the climate crisis continued in different parts of the world, even during the pandemic. And of course, for the safety of everyone and to listen to the guidelines from the science, we decided to stop meeting physically for the activism and just stay at home. But however, that didn't stop the climate movement. So we did a lot of things. I can give an example of us in Rise Up movement. We made lots of, videos during that time. We did we would take like photos, we did lots of campaigns on social media while we were all at home in our different place, in our different homes. So we continued. So we would just do different campaigns, share photos, do photo collages, and share on social media. We would do videos and also join them sometimes and share on social media. We started a blog in Rise Up Movement. It's called 1 Million Activist Stories. And during that time, we would, feature different activists and share blogs about their work and what they're doing and how they can be supported and how their voices can be amplified. So even in this time, we did everything we could to continue that, to show that activism, didn't come to an end because of the pandemic. Yeah, we were facing the pandemic, but still there's another crisis that needed to be handled. And also, we still needed to put lots of pressure on leaders and governments to feel comfortable, because no one is striking anymore. No one is telling them to take decisions for the people and the planet anymore. So we made sure that even in activism, while we were at home, we continued to do a lot of work, a lot of organizing on social media.
Right, that's a very important point. Just because the world comes to stand still doesn't mean the existing inequalities and existing crises is also do. So yeah, that's a really important point. So in a post-pandemic world, what kind of an education do you think would come in?
I think a lot of communication needs to be done about the crisis, and I think a lot of education and empowerment needs to be done again about the climate crisis. And I didn't mention this, but I remember in school, high school, there are different subjects, but I remember specifically in geography, that's where they would talk about climate change. But then it's like we studied just to do exams and excel and go to the next class. So we never really understood the reality of climate change. It's not taught as a present reality in schools. So many young people are so disconnected from the natural world that they don't even know what's happening. I was completely disconnected from nature, from the planet, and the time I've got to understand what nature really is and how we are connected to it, that started at the end of 2018, not so far away. So sometimes I wish I had got this education in school about social issues, about inequalities that climate change causes. I would have probably become an activist much earlier because of the information I would have got, but I didn't get that information. So for a post-pandemic world, I really hope to see more education in schools so that children understand their connection with nature. We all have a part to play. So we need more education in schools. If it's to be added to school curriculums, then that's what needs to be done for students to understand, and not just students, but also people in communities, that people who are not going to school, but still they don't have that knowledge of climate change, but then they're important. Some of them are women who take care of the farms, who who take care of their homes, like society has provided for provided for that to be done by them. So even then, they deserve to be educated, they deserve to be empowered. They may not receive the same education that students will receive, but they will receive an education and an empowerment in the language that they understand, that they can also contribute to protecting the natural world. So I think post-pandemic world, we need everyone to be involved, whether you're a student or whether you're not a student, because all of us need to work together. When we work together, when we work united, I believe we'll be able to transform the world and make it a better place. And also, just to emphasize, I think of a post-pandemic world where more funding is increased for education, especially for girls, because Project Drawdown lists 100 activities or things we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and ranked number 5 as the most impactful solution is educating girls and family planning. So funding for girls really needs to be increased in the post-pandemic world so that more girls can go to school. This is a solution that will reduce inequalities, already existing inequalities in the societies, a solution that will also build resilience, not just of the girls, but of their families and of their communities, and also a solution that will reduce emissions all at the same time. So I am really up for education in the post-pandemic world.
Right, right. So this conversation has been really, really insightful for me. And I think just the depth of your insight and your strong will to action is so inspiring for me. If you had one message for all our student leaders and others watching us today, what would that be?
Yeah, thank you. I think what I would really say, what I know is that many young people would love to do something, but then some of them are scared. Some of them feel they don't have enough resources, like I said before. But you don't need to start, from the global level. You can start from your community, you can start from your society, you can start from your family members, talking to them. If it's about climate change, talking to them about the natural world, talking to them about our climate, and engaging with them on what they can do to better love and protect our planet. So it's those, little actions that will transform the world. Because if every student in India is doing something, in their community, however small it is, and every student in Uganda is also doing something in their community. If we put all those actions together, we realize how much our societies are transformed. And if our societies are transformed, then our entire world is transformed. So let us, not underlook those small actions that we take, or those small forms of activism, speaking to people, speaking to family, speaking to fellow students, speaking to relatives, parents, etc. Let us not underlook them, because they're important. Because if all of us are doing all those small things, the moment they are put together, that's how we'll see how powerful those actions are.
That's really beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
Thank you so much, Tanika and Vanessa. And Shivani Didi, what do you think about a game right now?
You want to play a game on live stream? I'm a little bit curious as to how that will work.
Yes. So we will say a word, and you, our audience, will respond to it by sharing 3 words, 2 sentences, and a question that you associate with the word, and you will put that in the chat box. Shivani Didi, how about you tell us a word?
Okay. So since KER week is all about reimagining education, why don't we just go with that? So the word is education, and I want all our audience members here tonight to think of 3 words, 2 sentences, and one question that comes to your mind when I say the word education. You can please put your thoughts in the chat box, and we will take some time to read that later. But until then, Huena, why don't you share what's on your mind when you hear the word education?
Okay, so when I think of the word education, 3 words that come revolve around my mind are first classroom, second boys, and third students. And when I think of involving these 3 words in 2 sentences, then it would be, how can I make my classroom more beautiful for all the students, where they can voice out their opinion openly, where they find this safe space. But I also think of a question when I look at the such sentences, that how can we create such safe spaces for all our students?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you with just how important it is to have safe spaces for voice, right? And to make every student feel like their unique story really matters. We're now going to quickly head over to the chat and see what all our friends here on the live stream have to say. So I can hear words like liberation, knowledge. Some people think education needs to break barriers, which I think is absolutely beautiful. Education should be inclusive. I think that's such an important point, right? How can we make every child, empowered enough to access the kind of education that they want? Education means love. Koina, do you want to say something to that? What do you feel about that?
I feel yes, like we students, we learn so many things, and love is the most important thing when we are in the school. And I guess education tells it very beautifully.
Another one that I absolutely love is how can we make education fun for kids, right? Learning is so much more than just textbooks and the four walls of a classroom. So how can we really bring joy and love in the kind of learning that we impart? We're going to take 2 or 3 more responses. I'm going to quickly go through the chat and see what else we have. I can see lifelong learning, and I think that's something I really resonate with. Koina, what do you think about that?
Can you just repeat that sentence?
It's lifelong learning. Lifelong learning.
Yes, I guess education really helps us to become better version of ourselves. Education helps us become much more aware, and I guess definitely becomes a lifelong experience, a learning maybe.
And I think a very important question we have is online better or face-to-face better? I think that's a question we all have been grappling with over the past year. But thank you all so much. Please keep sending in your responses. We would love to keep reading them, even if we can't call all of them out right now. But I would also like to share a question that very often comes to my mind when I think of education, right? And I always think about what would it mean for every child to really explore their own story, and what if education can really empower them to do that, to really build their own unique story?
Yes, that's a really thoughtful question, I must say. And I totally agree to that. Speaking of stories, our next performance is by our 8 very special students who have worked with a digital theater platform called Alphas to put into word and music their challenging experience throughout the pandemic and of the pandemic, the strong spirit through it all, and their stories of resilience and movement building as a student.
Over the past year, the world as we know it has fallen apart. The new normal is far from stable or comfortable. They said that no one had seen anything like this before. The roads were empty and the shops were shuttered closed. Every smile hid behind a mask. Every friend was now on a screen. This is a story of how we held on to ourselves and our dreams.
Of course, it wasn't easy. And the scars of the past year will linger as unwanted reminders of hardship. But spending so much time with yourself puts the spotlight on what I want, what I can do, and how I can do that.
School wasn't the same without passing chits or chatting through lunch break. And before the new friendships we made in different cities from our travels could solidify into lifelong bonds, we were cut off from hugs and casual conversations, contemplating the big questions we overheard with our blossoming minds.
What does it mean to overcome? What can we do in the face of the unknown? Scraps of newspapers and stolen statistics were not enough to calm our spirits. But when the sun sank over our childhood bedrooms with never-ending familiarity, the only thing left to do was reimagine the horizons of what could possibly be, turning our curiosity into creations with both fumbles and resilience, a coming-of-age story starring homemade entrepreneurs and young civilians.
Our skills and hobbies found renewed purpose. Everything could be done at once. The silent student voice surfaced again through social networks. A generation of students unlearning textbooks and absorbing visible history. We gave our thoughts space to breathe and take flight independently.
Social media led me build an online community of people who were navigating these circumstances with me. There was so much I got off my chest, so many things other friends understood without ever being said. We don't know what's going to happen with full certainty, but we know we can adapt together and forge our own faith.
Divided by the closed borders, united by our strange common experiences, swapping stories about hardship, mental health, and gratefulness. We reminded each other to look after ourselves and stay afloat, asking, have you eaten today? Did you get to go for a walk? How are your parents?
In a year of confusion, it was creativity and passion that shone through. It was time to be brave, to dream loudly, to grab in the new. When this has happened, when all is said and done, we fell together like cadets and learnt how to overcome. Even though everything was turned upside down, we kept our heads straight and broke new ground.
We are living in a world that needs to change. We have found our voice, we know we have a choice.
Our little light is shining bright. We're all made of stars, and the future's ours.
Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. We can put our broken world back together. We're diamonds in the rough. We can be wise and tough.
You try to bury us, but we are seeds. We won't be shy or scared. We'll arrive prepared.
Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. We're gonna rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. We're gonna rise up, rise up. We're gonna rise up. Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. We are the ones we are waiting for.
Thank you so much, Team Alfaz, and our superstars, Khushi. Rishi, Rutik, Sairaj, Tanika, Archana, Bhargavi, Kanshri, and Almaz. The past year has been difficult, but seeing our students in action has been really something that's kept me going personally as an educator.
For our next segment, we have Padma Bhushan Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria GPS for CNN World and author of the book In Defense of a Liberal Education, in conversation with our amazing revolutionary Huda, an 11th grader from Hyderabad who believes in the importance of creating safe spaces in her school. They'll be talking about how educators and students can show leadership during a crisis and work together as partners.
Hi, Huda. Pleasure to meet you.
Hello, Bhaya. I am Huda, and I'm currently studying in 11th grade. I find my zest in the reimagining education system, and for this, I'm working from past 3 years to with students. I have been worked with students for 2 years, taught them, and have been a part of KER in different spaces, and have joined internships, different internships to learn about pedagogical skills. And the most biggest objective in working on this is to understand the role of educators in bringing the reimagined education to the real world. As Shine Didi said, like it is my biggest dream to become a teacher, so I'm working to understand the role of educator and how I can bring my reimagined education system through being an educator. And it's very exciting to have you over here in this conversation. I'm sure that our community of students and educators are going to learn a lot from this conversation. To begin with, I wanted to start out with a question that in a long standing journey of being a host, columnist, journalist, editor, what are some learnings or insights you have gained about the role of young people in building movements of change across the globe?
Well, I think I have always approached journalism as a form of education. I think that journalism should be about helping to educate people about the issues that their country, their community, their city faces, and that the world faces. So I have very much approached it from the point of view of trying to figure out what are the most important issues, how do you describe them, how do you analyze them, how do you clarify them in a way that people can understand them better, and raise the general level of knowledge in the world, because I do believe that it is very important in every society that there be a greater degree of awareness and information about what is going on around the world. And in a way, the only way to do this is education, and that journalists must think of themselves really as public educators. So I don't think of the people who I'm writing for, producing television shows for, as children, but I think of them as students. And I think that we are going on a journey together to try to understand. And so, in a sense, I've always been very attracted to the idea of talking to young people, of interacting with young people, because young people are naturally students. They want to learn about the world. People like you are curious. You ask why, and those are the most important questions we need to answer. We need to really push forward and understand that particularly children today are asking very big questions about how is the world working, how are we doing the right things, are we making the right choices. So for me, young people have always been an inspiration, and I always try to make sure that what I'm doing has this educational component. There's a lot of journalism that is about generating heat, shouting matches, people yelling and screaming. If you watch Indian news on television, there are 20 boxes with 20 different people. They're all talking at the same time. It's more a tamasha than it is an actual conversation. I don't want to generate heat. I want to generate light. I want to generate light in the sense of enlightening people about the world that they're living in.
I think it's lovely the way you have connected journalism to the education system and to the educators and students. I also feel like that these young leaders in this education system, because of 1.5 years, because of the pandemic, they have been affected in different ways, and and this have affect, some students have been affected mentally. Some students are facing difficulties because of lack of resources, lack of devices, and they have to escape their academic years. On that note, I wanted to ask you about how do you think this pandemic is going to affect the global student community in the medium of long term, especially students from marginalized communities?
I think you ask a very important question, and the question really is being asked all over the world, not just in India, not just in poor places, because everyone has been affected. You know, one of the great fascinating features of this pandemic is this may be one of the few events in human history. I can't think of anyone other one in my lifetime where all of us have been affected by the same thing. You know, everybody all over the world is facing the challenges that the pandemic produced. Now, some are in better positions than others to deal with it, but everyone is facing the same challenges. So I think the most important thing we have learned from the pandemic with regard to young people and to education is that, first of all, there is a big difference between the access people have to digital education. You know, that digital education must become a kind of right that people have rather than a luxury, because you realize that, you know, in a situation like this, places that had good Wi-Fi, good internet, students that had those accesses, they were going to do much better than the people that did not. And so we really have to transition very quickly. In India, it will inevitably be on a 4G and 5G platform rather than on using internet and Wi-Fi, because the phone is going to be the computer for most Indians. But then the second part, I think, is that we have realized that there are limits to how much you can learn through online means, through digital means right now. I think that the online education has proved itself to be just not as good as in-person education. And this is true even in the finest places in the world. My children go to school in America. And even at Yale University, where my son is a student, an undergraduate, you know, you can still see that the students much prefer the in-person education. Online has limits. It's very one-dimensional, whereas education is really multidimensional. A lot of what you learn in the classroom from other students. A lot of what you learn is social behavior. A lot of what you learn is how to interact with people, how to work as a team. And all that is lost in the digital, in the online. The online is really just one person talking to many. It's hard to get the interaction right. It's hard to get to see people, to understand their emotions. All that is part of education. So we've learned the power of online, but also the limitations. And so I think going forward, there's an extraordinary opportunity for us to bring together these things: in-person education, classroom education, plus online. Not view them as one or the other, but view them as both working together, trying to find a way to create a kind of hybrid model, part online, part in person, that would be best for the students. I think that we need a lot of input from students to understand what went right and what went wrong. So that to me is the most important takeaway. But let's never forget that online remains a luxury for many, many people. And we have to make that luxury a necessity, a basic right first. And then we have to find a way to create the right combination of online and in person.
Again, I really love the one more point about how you said that the access of the devices should be our rights. And in this pandemic too, there are so many students, young leaders who are trying to continue with the story of change making. They are continuing fighting with obstacles every day whatever obstacles are coming in their way. They are trying to fight through that and learn from the surroundings. um on that I wanted to hear about from you on what are some stories of youth leadership that you have heard or seen during this pandemic, that has instilled hope in you.
I think the main reason to have hope from this pandemic is that it has been a disruptor. It has really, affected everybody. It's changed so much. That is a very difficult thing to deal with, but it also means that you are willing to accept change because you're already experiencing change. Think about all of us in our personal lives. We have accepted so much change. We have gone through this pandemic where we are spending much less time physically, meeting with many of the people who are our close friends or colleagues from work. We're not traveling as much. We are being careful, wearing masks, making sure that we wash our hands. All these practices and procedures we have adopted. And perhaps the most important one, we've gotten comfortable with a certain degree of isolation. Not everybody doing the same amount. Different people I have, for example, a reasonably large family of 3 children. So, I didn't feel that isolated, but it still has for everyone meant a big change. So let's take that. The hardest thing in life is to embrace change, to accept that the old way of doing things is not going to continue. And big disruptions like pandemics allow you to do that because you're already changing. You're already having to embrace new things and new ways and new practices. So for me, that's the biggest hope that comes out of this. Now, where have I seen some things? Well, like some small things you see, which I think are indications of this. In the Western world, I don't know if this is as true in India, but you have cities that are trying to now reimagine what it means to be a city, because they realize, okay, all the restaurants need to be able to have outdoor seating. All the parks need to be open, because in a situation like this, people have to be outdoors. We have to think about meeting in an outdoor space rather than an indoor space. What does that mean for the streets? Do we make more space for pedestrians and less space for cars? How do we, change all this? Universities are thinking about holding classrooms outdoors. People have begun to think about this hybrid model we were talking about, part online, part in person. So every company is thinking, is it possible to let people work 2 days at home, 3 days in the office? All these changes would not have happened for decades if not for the pandemic. So many of them are going to produce more opportunities, more freedom, more educational advancement. So I think we have to take those good parts of the pandemic and not focus on all the bad things, and say, how can we embrace all these good changes? And we're going to have to try things. Nobody knows the answer. Nobody knows what are the best solutions that come out of the pandemic. So what we have to do is try a bunch of things. Some will work, some will not work. Cast aside the stuff that doesn't work and take advantage of the things that are working. And if we do it that way, I believe we will find that the pandemic has a silver lining. They say for in every cloud there is a silver lining. Well, the silver lining of this pandemic will be that we can move toward positive change in our societies, in our schools, in our companies, in our governments much faster, because we already had to start doing things differently anyway.
Listening this response from you on this question, it has reminded me the beauty of reflection, and especially during this times, many people are trying to know the answer that like when can we reopen schools as soon as possible. And I think this is exactly what we can do. Like we can keep some of the virtual space alive with us in some of the physical space, and that collaboration will look perfect, I think, like because I think it will fill the missing gap in the between, like what students are missing, like the culture and everything will be back with also learning different things with the online. So in this thing, I wanted to ask you about what kind of education system do you think will be most effective and powerful in post-pandemic world?
Sure, it's a great question, but it's a wonderful note to end on our conversation. I think that the truth of the matter is you ask a very difficult question. Nobody really knows what is the best system, so one very important difference, I would say, between systems, broadly speaking, is that there are systems that are more traditional and there's systems that are more open and progressive and modern, and you can call them maybe modern. America's system is much more open. India's system is much more traditional. So what's the difference? The Indian system is much more directed and oriented towards a lot of memorization, a lot of just repeating what the teacher tells you. I remember when I was going to school in India, and I went to a very good school, there would be classes where the teacher would just come into the room, open the textbook and read from the textbook for 45 minutes and then close the textbook and go. And we were meant to take notes and memorize those notes. And then when the exam came, we had to reproduce from our memory what we had heard. In America, there's a much greater emphasis on making you think, making you solve problems, asking, what do you think of this material? How would you respond? What are the strengths and weaknesses of this? So you're forced to think much more. There are some areas where the Indian system is better. There's some things in life you have to memorize. You have to know your multiplication tables. You have to, when you're learning a language, you have to learn vocabulary. You have to know the words and their meanings. But there is also a great value to opening up people and allowing them to follow their own way of thinking and their own train of thought. So, you're looking for some combination probably of the two. And that will be true whether it's the post-pandemic or pre-pandemic. What the right balance between online and digital we talked about, we will have to work it out. But I'll say this, the one feature of every successful education system in the world is teachers, great teachers. So the most important thing India needs to do is what, by the way, America needs to do, any country needs to do, which is figure out how to get really talented people who are willing to be teachers. How do you honor them? How do you respect them? How do you pay them properly? How do you recognize that teaching is really the most important profession? Because let's understand, teaching is the profession that makes every other profession possible, right? If you don't have teachers as professionals, they cannot teach people how to be engineers, doctors, lawyers, whatever it is. So teaching is the foundation. It's the basis on which all other professions become possible. So that's why I do think it's a particular honor for me to talk to you, because I love to hear that you want to be a teacher. And I think it's something I wish more talented, bright, imaginative people like you were to do. I remember there's a very beautiful line in a play called A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt, in which this young man is asking a very, very wise man, Sir Thomas More, why should I be a teacher? If I were a teacher and I'm teaching in some classroom somewhere, nobody will know. And Sir Thomas More looks at him and he says, well, people will know. Here's who will know. You will know, your students will know, and God will know. That is not a bad audience. And I think that it's really true that we should remember that for a teacher, the ultimate reward is that you are going to change the lives of your students forever. And that's a huge reward, and that is a huge sense of gratification that comes from very few professions. And so I hope we recognize that, to be a teacher is to be engaged in the highest form of public service, and that is what is going to help any education system in any country, anywhere in the world, pre-pandemic or post-pandemic. So thank you, Huda, for deciding to be a teacher, and thank you for this wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Bhaiya, for being here. It really inspires me, and it add a new like reason of being a teacher for me. Like I think like I've thought of so many reasons for being a teacher, but this is something that added a new point in my reasons list about being a teacher. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Fareed Bhaiya and Huda. It was so much remarkable for me when Fareed Bhaiya said, I use journalism as a form of education. Journalism should be used as a source of helping people educate. I do believe that taking out the most important issues and making people aware about it is the best. About which it also reminds me of our very own sea consciousness. I guess that is all what we need to do. Just be aware about what we believe in, raise our voice, and help each other throughout the different situations. Now, talking about the whole day, then the whole day was literally filled with so much learning. First, our beautiful soulmates took over the stage and talked about issues so creatively. Then we heard Tanika and Vanessa speak about their story of courage. Then our revolutionaries narrated such inspiring stories and showed collaboration. Amazing. Huda, in conversation with Fareed Bhaiya, who told us about the importance of curiosity and communication. And at last, how can we forget about you, our compassionate audience, being critical thinker throughout the day? With that, we've reached to the end of our performances for the day, but we still have so much coming up for you.
We would love to take this opportunity to thank some very special people, our artists without whom this evening would not have been possible. Thank you so much for sharing all your beautiful stories with us.
Secondly, you, our audiences, all our audience members being here tonight to witness the magic.
And last but not the least, our supporter Rise, an anchor program by Schmidt Future, which builds a global community of extraordinary student leaders who use their talent to serve others.
We have now something special for you. Our student stories by our student leaders.
Hello everybody, my name is Danika and I'm a 10th grader from Ahmedabad. I've been a KER student leader since 2018 and I'm the host of this very special news bulletin dedicated entirely to children as change makers. Today has been all about inspiration. We heard stories of student leadership, partnership, and incredible resilience through a crisis. And I'm here to share some inspiration during what has been a very tough year for all of us. Our first sparks of hope comes all the way from Ahmedabad and Hyderabad. When the lockdown was announced, Rehan, a Teach for India student from Ahmedabad, and Sapura, a student from Hyderabad, and their families were affected too. But keeping in mind the needs of their community, they mobilized ration kits for hundreds of people who were in need of essential supplies.
I think the best feeling in your life is after you help someone and the kind of feeling you get. And I think it doesn't matter whatever the situation is, but if you can help someone, doesn't matter whatever happens. So I think that is something that is keeping me doing the kind of work I am able to.
What an amazing feat. Well done, Rehan and Sapura. And now, Coming to us straight from the capital, 12th grade student Jyoti has started a community project called Gurukul with the aim of providing art education to kids from undeserved communities. Due to the pandemic, weekly sessions have been shifted online. At the end of every month, they do a showcase called Gurukul Darbar, in which people share their experiences and opinions through art.
The responses that we received really motivated us to go ahead and shift Gurukul to an online mode, because we knew that all of us really want to learn and we want to start it with our own self to bring that change. And that's what helped us to not give up during the pandemic as well.
So beautiful. And experiencing one's feeling throughout can be really helpful, especially during such stressful times. Our third spark of hope is taking us all the way down to the very south. Deepika, a grade 10 student in Chennai, interviewed her peers to understand the effect the lockdown has had on them. An advocate of mental health, she took this initiative so that her friends and classmates would have a space to acknowledge their feelings and be able to provide support for one another.
During the pandemic, my friends and I, a team of 4, began a project called In a Quest, where we ensured a very good mental health in people during the volatile times. Our motto was very simple. It was celebrating every little thing. So we hosted a couple of activities and events for people so that they got that time to spend that me time within themselves, get to unleash their talents and rejoice every single moment.
Our mental health is just as important as our physical one. Thank you for shining a light on this, Deepika. Like we just spoke about, a lot of us struggled with our mental and emotional health through a year of lockdowns and isolation. So, in order to lift everybody's spirits, Radha, a student from Delhi, along with some of her peers, decided to make a video depicting random acts of kindness that they partook in.
यार मुझे ना डॉक्टर्स और उनकी फैमिली के लिए बहुत बुरा लग रहा था, तो मैंने सोचा कि मैं अपने पड़ोस वाले डॉक्टर के लिए एक थैंक यू कार्ड बनाऊं, जिससे कि वो थोड़ा सा चेयर अप हो जाए। तो मैंने उनके लिए एक छोटा सा थैंक यू कार्ड बनाया। दिशा, तूने क्या किया?
आज जो मेरे घर सब्जी वाले भैया आए थे, मैंने उनसे पूछा कि वो कैसे हैं और उन्हें पानी पिलाया।
छोटी छोटी चीजों में भी कितनी खुशियां मिल सकती हैं ना। खुशियां फैलाएं, वायरस नहीं। From all the students, we want to thank all doctors, nurses, hospital staff, vegetable sellers, policemen, sanitation workers और वो सब लोग जो बाहर काम कर रहे हैं. A big thank you.
Believe it or not, there is more good news. Archana and Bhargavi strongly believe that student voice should be a very important element in our education, as students have the power to bring about change. They work together to bring this vision alive through the project Nama Voice, translated as Our Voice in English.
This project focuses on student voice. We have been working on this project since a year now to build student voice within students and to bring that alive in every classroom.
Love this. Student leadership is what enables change. And these were just a few stories. We have seen students raise their voice for issues that really matter to them and build movements of change. I hope the incredible stories of student leadership you heard today have sparked a feeling of hope in you too. To hear more sparks of hope and to share your own sparks of hope, keep in touch with us on Instagram at Kids Education Revolution. Together, we can get through this. Thank you for watching and stay safe. Bye.
One of KER week with a little bit of nostalgia.
We hope this walk down memory lane gives you a sense of love and community.
We also look forward to having you with us through days 2, 3, and 4 of KER week, where we will explore the role of a reimagined education in driving change. For all those of you who have registered for our sessions, you will receive the link in your inbox tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being.
Okay, let's try.
Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you all so much.
We are living to change. We have found our voice, we know we have a choice. Our little light is shining bright. We're all made of stars, and the future's ours. Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. So I will rise, we will rise, we will rise. We can put our broken world back together. We're diamonds in the rough, we can be wise and tough. You try to bury us, but we are seeds. We won't be shy or scared, we'll arrive prepared. Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. Gonna rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. We're gonna rise up, rise up.
What's up? Run what I page, quake, raging, putting institution now, but just don't that we're just getting started, so tell them we've just begun. Yeah.
Just watch us shine, we may be small, but hear us roar. We can change the world, now watch us soar. We know what we need, it's time for us to lead. We are the ones we are waiting for. We are the ones we are waiting for. We are the ones we are waiting for.
I will see you in 2021.